From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Wednesday, July the 7th, 2021. We open with the swearing in of the 11th President of the State of Israel, Isaac Herzog. Herzog took the oath of office today at the Knesset on a 107-year-old Bible, which his father, Chaim Herzog, used when he was sworn in as Israel's 6th president in 1983. Speaking at the Knesset today, Herzog pledged to be everyone's president and called for unity within Israeli society. He said, "My mission, the central task of my term, will be to do everything to rebuild hope." Yesterday, Herzog went to the Koll, the Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City, ahead of the ceremony. He tweeted, "It is precisely from this holy place that has seen the destruction and also the resurrection that it is important to learn and memorize how important our unity is. As president, I will do my best to make a significant contribution to the unity of our people, to calming the spirits within us, and to strengthening the sublime vision of the love of Israel." Herzog replaces Ruvi Rivlin, who has served as Israel's president since 2014. A special 4th of July celebration was held at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem yesterday. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett addressed the gathering and spoke about his own deep connection to the United States, where he spent several years as a child. Both of Bennett's parents were born and raised in the U.S. in San Francisco. And Bennett spoke of the deep connection between the U.S. and Israel and his commitment to make that bond even stronger, and the critical importance of support of the U.S.-Israel alliance across the board.
And I'll challenge any attempt to make America a partisan political issue in Israel, and any attempt to make Israel a partisan political issue in the United States. Our policy is bipartisan. We're friends of everyone, because the friendship between our two democracies will always transcend party politics.
The event yesterday also included remarks from U.S. Embassy in Israel Charge d'Affaires Michael Ratney and U.S. Democratic Congressman from New York Gregory Meeks, who noted in his comments that he is the first African American to be the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And Meeks spoke passionately about the deep bond and history between the Jewish people and people of color in the U.S., saying both communities know what it feels like to be oppressed.
I would not be standing here today if it wasn't for my Jewish brothers and sisters standing along and working with Dr. Martin Luther King to make America a better place, to turn it around and say we're going to stand for what's right. If it wasn't for my Jewish brothers and sisters with thoughts and ideas and the values that they have, I would not be standing here today as a member of the United States House of Representatives.
Meeks also spoke about the U.S.-Israel alliance and commitment to Israel.
So to make sure that Iran doesn't get its way, we're going to lock arm in arms with you to make sure that Hamas doesn't get its way. We're going to lock arm in arms with you to make sure that the historic moment that is upon us with the Abraham Accords, that we get more people to join and say Israel has the right to exist, and we're going to work with them hand in hand. It's a historic moment today.
Meeks is leading a bipartisan delegation to Israel from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, which tweeted that the delegation represents the bipartisan support for the State of Israel and its security. The values we share have forged an unbreakable bond between our two nations. And that delegation today met with Israel's foreign minister and alternate prime minister Yair Lapid at Israel's foreign ministry. Lapid tweeted that in the meeting, I emphasized the importance that Israel sees in bipartisan support. The special relationship between the United States and Israel, he said, is based on a shared worldview and values. And Lapid shared today that managing director of the ministry, Ayalon Ushpiz, sent a letter in his name to the foreign minister of Morocco, Nasser Bourita, with an invitation for the first official visit ever of a Moroccan foreign minister to Israel. Lapid called the renewal of full diplomatic relations between Israel and Morocco a historic milestone. As we had reported to you, Ushpiz is visiting Morocco this week, meeting with Moroccan Director General of Political Affairs, Fouad Yazzour, among others. And Ushpiz tweeted to Yazzour, "Thank you for today's productive dialogue and for your warm hospitality. We look forward to further building our cooperation for the benefit of our peoples and the entire region." Israel and Morocco renewed diplomatic ties this past December after ties were severed 20 years ago. Turning now to some sports news, Denis Shapovalov qualified at Wimbledon for the first semifinal. The Jewish-Canadian player was born in Israel and grew up in Canada. On Friday, he will face two-time defending champion Serbian player Novak Djokovic to try and reach the final. Shapovalov's parents were born in Russia, emigrated to Israel, and then moved to Canada. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Wednesday, July the 7th at 7 o'clock. Israel's former ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, discusses the relationship between American Jewry and Israel. At 8 o'clock, the pros and pitfalls of the emerging Biden-Bennett relationship are assessed by former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Dani Ayalon, and former Deputy Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Arthur Koll. At 9, it's part 2 of a discussion with the author of Jewish Justices of the Supreme Court, David Dalin, on L'chaim. At 10, Jeffrey Rosen talks about the life of Louis Brandeis with UConn professor David Yalof. And coming up next, it's Thinking Out Loud. And that's the JBS News Update for Wednesday, July the 7th, 2021. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy, stay well.